The ultimate adventure continues, as read by the bathroom reader. I am covering for the Plurality Report, who thinks that the flags of Malaysia, the United States, and Liberia look completely different with no similarities whatsoever. Chapter 9. In the night, the castle was luminous as the eyes of a cat. It raised 3 squat towers into the star-splashed sky and spread itself over a full acre of ground, but there were no lights whatsoever in its windows, embrasures, or arrow slots. Stevie felt like a mouse looking at a trap. He reined in the donkey and studied the place with a sinking sensation. "Are you sure this is it?" "Yes," said the donkey. "You'll find out soon enough," vowed the pig. You've done us enough harm already," said the chicken, without telling Karoof. "Without telling Karoof, we'll thank you to keep still about that." Stevie dismounted. He wanted very badly to turn and flee, but with effort he forced himself to remember the way the beautiful Tedmer had seemed to smile at him. And then, hadn't he bested Moseb? Hadn't he made fools of these 3 ghouls? "I'll walk ahead," said Stevie, "and when I am a few hundred yards away I shall throw some sand over these amulets, and you can come and search for them. That will give me time." "Don't bury them very deep," said the chicken with anxiety. "I feel like I've been squashed, and I tell you I've got no liking for scratching sand half the night." Stevie walked towards the arched gates. If it weren't for these 3 ghouls, he would have found it more difficult to proceed. But they were watching him, and he almost smiled to think that he cared about the opinions of the ghouls. Before he had gone far, he stopped and buried the amulets, brushing the sand evenly back over them. Hastily he went on. Plainly this place was deserted. Not a single light anywhere. But immediately he recalled what Shakar had said about the jinn. They were deathly afraid of fire, and, of course, it took fire of some sort to make a light if there wasn't any electricity to be had. He stopped and glanced back. The ghouls were loping toward the spot where he had buried the amulets. It was too late to recover them. No, he had to get on with this mad project, although the memory of that gigantic Ifrit holding him out over space almost overcame his good resolutions to be brave henceforth. Swiftly he proceeded. Behind him the ghouls were searching wildly for the amulets. Stevie was within 20 feet of the gates when he saw the guards. He had expected demons of one sort or another, not helmeted soldiers with blue capes and long pikes. They looked human, although he saw at once they were about 8 feet tall. And then they saw him, and his knees almost buckled. They had cat eyes, and even in this pale starlight he could see the shaggy hair upon their arms and hands. As he drew nearer, he saw that each had 2 fangs like boars, which came up from the jaw to curve out over the upper lip. The hideous creatures were enough to turn his stomach. He stopped and saluted them, but when he tried to speak he discovered he had no voice. With a surge of willpower he forced himself to speak. "Good evening. I wish to see Karoof." The 2 Ifrit soldiers stepped out from their posts against either side of the gate and peered into Stevie's face. Their nostrils, gaping holes in their faces, opened and closed as they sniffed at him. "You're human," said one in astonishment. "Yes, I am human. I have business with Karoof. Take me to him immediately." They looked at each other. One shouted back into the limitless courtyard, and boots ground upon the stone pavement as an officer came up. He had a spiked steel helmet on his head, from which dropped a neckcloth. His sword glowed with precious stones. 2 huge emeralds dangled from his ears, which were covered with hair. His fangs glistened, and his eyes glowed palely as he studied the intruder. "He wishes to see Karuf. He is a human," said a guard. "You're a madman," said the officer with decision. "I wish to see Karuf," said Stevie, hoping they would not keep him standing here forever. His knees were going to buckle, and he was going to be sick from the wild animal smell of them. His neck ached as he looked up into the captain's face. "This is a very strange business," said the officer. "No human has dared to come to this place of his own accord in all its history. But perhaps you do not understand. You are not from the city of Brass." "No, I come from a far land. I must see Karuf," said Stevie with feigned determination. "Go away," said the officer. "Perhaps you are a Magian and intend some wicked thing." Suddenly, a voice Stevie knew sounded behind him. "I am Toriel the Ghoul. You know of me. These are my friends, Blofeld and Denep. This fellow is a sorcerer." Stevie whirled to see the three ghouls in their proper form. "Yes, I have heard," said the captain. "On your way. We receive no ghouls here, much less humans." "We are friends of Karuf," said Toriel. "He will tell you. I have spoken to him. This human is a sorcerer, and he intends to cast a spell on Karuf and take his life. Your master will thank you to put him to death." "You lie!" roared Stevie. "This is no time to take chances," said Toriel. "It is the word of a ghoul against mine," cried Stevie in despair. "I have business with Karuf, and he will have you put to death if you harm me." He wondered from whence he conjured this inspiration. The officer scratched himself thoughtfully. Quite plainly he was undecided what course to take. "You run a great risk to let this fellow live," insisted Toriel. "And you run a greater risk if you put me to death," cried Stevie. The officer scratched his neck, pushing his helmet askew. "Well, there's only one thing for it. Karuf will not be here until tomorrow. It is for him to decide. We have nothing to fear from a sorcerer," he added as a warning to Stevie. "Seize him and carry him in." The soldiers grabbed Stevie, and though they thought they merely led him, his feet were actually 2 feet off the ground, and he swung like a leaf in the wind. He found an instant to glare back at the three ghouls who were laughing and making insulting gestures at him. Then they turned and went swiftly away, anxious to get home to supper. The soldiers whisked Stevie down a long flight of steps and cast him into a damp, windowless room. A third soldier was on guard there, a stupid-looking djinn whose lower lip sagged down between his 2 brown fangs. "Take care of him," said the officer. "When Karuf returns, his fate shall be decided." The soldier bowed, and the officer and guards went back up the steps and out of sight. Stevie walked forlornly around the cell. It had been so hard to get his courage up. He had keyed himself to a meeting with Karuf and a series of threats, and now he had only dark walls. The letdown was terrible. He sagged to a pallet of straw and sank into a state which admitted no feeling whatsoever, more a stupor than sleep. When he came out of it, he knew he must have remained that way for hours, as he felt a little refreshed. He fumbled for and found the revolver. He fingered his other belongings, fountain pen, pocket knife, a box of matches, and some old letters. He became aware of light in the place, and saw that the rising sun let in a thin shaft through the grates of the door. He stirred, and the acute ears of the guard heard him. Stevie stared as he saw the brutish face and the staring eyes in the grate. Hastily he put away his belongings. He could not risk losing them. In a land where weapons were bows, swords, and daggers, all visible, he could get by unless he was spied upon. The guard, who had never seen pockets in clothes, wondered at the vanishing of the mysterious objects. Holding his pike before him, he unbolted the door and came in with threatening mien. Stevie felt that all was lost.
What have you there?
Nothing, said Stevie.
Give them to me.
On your head be it, said Stevie. They were presents from Carruth, and what if he hears that a mere guard took them? The Merid was uncertain. His was not the intelligence of the Ifrit. Stevie, suddenly heartened by such weight given to a statement, pushed bravely on. Have a care with me, as I am very angry. I came to see Carruth, and find that his guest chambers are like stables.
He has fine guest chambers,
defended the Merid. Pah, said Stevie. If he should come to my palace, I would never give him such a hovel. Admitted, he does give me a guard to protect me, and for that I thank him, but for his bed I can never forgive him. The upsetting effect of this upon the Merid was like tonic to Stevie. He knew well the artifices of his heroes. He has great troubles, and I am here to relieve him of them. After he sends for me, and I come from my far land, am I to be so treated? I have more important business than this.
You were to help him?
Gawped the Merid. Of course. Do you think Tedmer will listen to any djinn? Only a human can convince her of the course of wisdom. When Carruth asked me to try my hand, I told him I had little time, and now see what has happened. A stupid officer delays me an entire night. Is not Carruth here yet? He trembled lest he had pushed this thing too far.
We will know when he arrives. The trumpets will sound. But do not be angry with me. I have nothing to do with this. I am but poor Merid, acting under orders, and if the captain has erred, then it is on his head. Then it is on the head of the captain. If you can so convince Carruth, you'll escape, of course. You have nothing to worry about. But the doubt was in the head of the Merid. Well, he knew the penalty of stupidity in the service of such an Ifrit. It meant one eye at the very least. I shall speak for you, said Stevie, and perhaps all will be well. But I am losing so very much time, and I have so much to do. It will take hours to convince Tedmer, even for a man of my understanding. He has had so much trouble with her,
said the Merid. Stevie grew more cunning. He took out the fountain pen, and it seemed to come from the empty air. He took the back of an envelope and said, I shall send a note to the captain. He began to write. The Merid stared at the work in astonishment. Stevie had no ink pot, and that little stick was very small, and lo, it was covering that whole piece of strange stuff with words.
That thing, ventured the Merid, is it magic? You have no ink pot, and it goes so swiftly.
This, said Stevie offhand. Why, yes, it was given to me by the king of Broadway and 42nd Street.
He must be very powerful with such a name,
gawped the Merid. Nor is that all the power he has, said Stevie. It protects the wearer from all harm. See, it writes forever.
It must be worth a great deal.
Oh, I suppose it is. I have no great need for such baubles.
Maybe I could bring you something and you could perhaps give it to me?
This, said Stevie. Give it to you?
Well, I know it must be worth a great deal. Please do not tell Carruth that I asked.
Wait, said Stevie, as though it was an afterthought. You can do me a service and serve Carruth as well. I tell you I must get about my business, and your master may not be here for hours. Take me to Tedmer right away, and closet me with her so that I can do Carruth this favor, and I shall give you this magic pen, he added. Carruth's gifts to me will doubtless make up for it. The Merid's eyes gleamed, but he was afraid. Stevie shrugged. Very well, delay me. Delay me and take the consequences. I care not what happens to a mere Merid. So please leave me. I hate stupid fellows.
No, please, do not be angry. If I stand guard outside her door, nothing whatever can happen. I am that guard, you know, if anything is wrong. But then how could it be?
If you did not know all about this thing, you would not risk letting Karuf catch you there. Of course not. It would mean instant death for you, and you would not risk that." Stevie shuddered, but kept his voice calm. "There, I did not think you were stupid. Take the pen and show me to the door." The guard peered up and down the corridor, and then led Stevie forth. Greedily the Merid snatched the pen. He almost missed the trap in the floor, he was gazing so fondly at his new possession. However, he stopped and pried out the ring and lifted up the great slab of stone with such ease that Stevie clearly understood the enormous strength with which he had to deal. It was like using a bean shooter on a grizzly bear. That was it. No, not the revolver. The Merid picked him up and dropped him into the hole. The jar almost broke Stevie's legs. The slab thumped back into place, and he groped about him, finding a wall and following it. At last he saw a shaft of sunlight coming through a grate in the ceiling. The room ahead was draped with silk, and great rugs covered the floor. The luster and color of it, even in this dimness, was astonishing. Tensed and watchful after hearing the slab drop back, Tedmer sat nervously upon a low divan. She was more beautiful than ever, and her smooth white skin matched the texture of the soft fabric which clothed her. Great strings of pearls adorned her neck, and a single diamond blazed in her glorious hair. Stevie felt as though the sight of her was a blow with a soft hammer. Even in this urgent instant he was stupefied with her beauty. He was afraid to talk to her. "What ruse is this?" she challenged in a commanding tone. Stevie blinked. "You have tried everything without avail. Do not hope, O Karuf, to place reliance in such an outlandish costume. Begone! I spit upon you and revile your name and house. Seek to touch me, and I shall destroy thee." "No," said Stevie. "No, please. You've got me wrong. I'm not Karuf. I am El Stefan. I come from a far land. I am human, not jinn." "Seek not to triumph with such lies. Change yourself into a bull or a butterfly, and the answer is always the same. I hate you." Stevie crossed to the center of the floor. "You don't understand. I've come to take you back to the city of brass. Graco slaughters the people and enslaves the noble. I am El Stefan. I come from a far land. I did not credit thee with such devious ways, Karuf, but now that you have shown your cunning, be gone. You have failed." Stevie faltered. It was hard to take such a tone from this lovely woman. Of course, it was all for Karuf, but it hurt just the same. And more, there was little time to lose. Karuf was due this day, perhaps was coming even now. "Do not argue," said Stevie. "I am El Stefan, not Karuf. I owe you this because I feel responsible for what has happened to your city. Somehow I shall get you out of this place." She laughed at him. "Karuf, you know that you cannot succeed. Why do you keep trying? First a beardless boy, prisoner of the jinn, then a shepherd, then a king who has just conquered the palace, all staged to disarm me. And now this. True, you have done an excellent job this time. You look very human, and have even concealed the points of your ears. And, as a human, you are not bad to look upon. Even, I might say, handsome. But assume thy true form and stop this stupid nonsense. Am I a witless girl?" "Tedmer," said Stevie in a pleading tone, "I am but human. I know nothing of this strange necromancy of the jinn. My world is mad. Yesterday I almost dined with ghouls. Last night I rode a ghoul to this place. I am in a strange realm without great powers, but I feel I have wronged you, and so I am here to make amends if that is possible. I managed to bribe a guard to let me in here, and if we do not immediately plan our leave-taking, Karuf will return from some journey he undertook, and all will be lost." "Karuf, how witless you are! You know that I know that no being would risk this thing. To be found here with me, it would be a horrible punishment. How could anyone pass those guards? No, such bravery has not yet been known in the city of brass.
I have been here all these years, outwitting you at every turn, and has any army come to me from my city? How then could one man brave such a thing? Yes, you are a fool, Karuf." "What I saw is true," wailed Stevie. "You must come with me, quickly. Your people thought Graco had killed you. They know nothing of this Ifrit. Some thought they saw one, but it is not generally believed. Your city does not even know it slumbered for years. It thinks but one night passed, and that Graco had you killed and buried within the palace when he overthrew the wazirs." "Graco, you say?" "Graco." She tried to place the name, puckering her white brow. "Graco, yes, the police informer, the man of 1,000 wiles. You mean that he is king? Graco?" "Yes." "When you first said it, I thought it was so much talk, but you have a strange air about you. You sound as if you speak the truth. You do not lisp as does the jinn. But be gone, these are lies." "They are not," cried Stevie. "You must return to the city and take your rightful place on the throne. I have come to return you. Make haste in the name of God before that Ifrit returns." She gave a start and stared at him. "Would you go that far? To use the name of God? You, an Ifrit?" Plainly she was bewildered, but the instant Stevie, thinking he had gained his point, advanced toward her, she threw herself away from him in scorn. "Not so soon, Karuf, not—" "Listen!" whispered Stevie. She stopped. Loud footsteps rang overhead. Stevie felt sick. He had stretched his courage as it was, and now, to be trapped here with Tedmer, at the mercy of Karuf. He gagged as he remembered dangling over empty space. Those horns, those eyes. The ring grated in the stone, and there came the voice of the Merid, shaking a trifle in an agony of fear. "Perhaps she sleeps, O Karuf." "You speak to me thus?" roared a mighty voice. "Who are you to advise me?" The crash which followed jarred the walls. The Merid did not speak again. The stone slab moved harshly upward, and the corridor light came down in the lower passageway, to be blotted the next instant as a gigantic foot intruded. Tedmer whispered, "Oh God, I have been thy death, my courageous one." Stevie was so much jelly. Suddenly the foot withdrew back into the corridor, and there came an angry mutter as Karuf told the unconscious Merid, "Thou nauseous odor, you have upset me with thy chatter." In the following short space of silence the girl whispered, "He comes as a young man, so not to frighten me. Quick, hide yourself behind that curtain. Perhaps he will leave if I make him angry." Stevie recovered himself enough to move behind the curtain, but he almost fell flat when his stool got underfoot. Tedmer smoothed the drapery and flung herself down upon the couch. A moment later, a young man in silken raiment and golden armor dropped lightly into the passageway. Stevie could see hazily through the weave of the fabric which covered him, and though the thought of Karuf made him stop breathing, he was somewhat heartened by that young fellow's charming appearance, yet fearful lest the Ifrit change again into a horned and hairy monster. "Good morning, O Tedmer," said Karuf in a milk and honey voice. "I flew swiftly, so great was my anxiety to see you. I had a dream, an ugly dream. A sorcerer had tried to steal you away, but how relieved I am that it was not true. But how pale you are!" "I am pale with the illness at the sight of you," said the scornful Tedmer. "I have prayed all during your absence that fire might consume you." "No," said Karuf, "do not say that. You hurt me. Can I never change your feelings toward me? Must you wear out these weary years fighting me? I, who can lay the wealth of all lands before you, who rule the jinn, am not as disgusting as that." "You have pointed ears," mocked Tedmer. He fingered them ruefully. Stevie gripped the revolver, but he dared not risk a shot. Even if he succeeded in killing this Karuf, a feat which he distrusted, the sound would bring the guards, and angry guards they would be. He was weak with terror. Even if the noise had not prevented it, He was shaking too badly to risk such a thing, and this monster could crush him with one hand without half trying. He was shaking so, he was certain that the brute could see the silk quiver. Smoothly, Tedmer changed her tactics. "Leave me now. I shall grow angry with you if you persist in bothering me. Even this terrible loneliness is better than your company." "Some day," said Karuf.
Some day, said Karuf in an abrupt change of voice. "You will anger me, Tedmer. I show you every possible courtesy. I do not even intrude my true powerful self upon you. I have given you everything a human could dream of. I warn you, you will carry this coldness too far. Even my love for you has begun to crack under this constant cruelty. You know my strength."
"I spit on your strength. Leave me. I grow weary of your boasting." Her anxiety was carrying her into dangerous channels.
"You see me this way. Perhaps you would rather I took on my true form."
"No, do not, I beg you." Stevie shivered. Maybe the keen sense of smell of the gin would return if that happened.
"Ah, I frighten you," said Karuf, advancing.
"Leave me, I command you."
"That dream," said Karuf. "I do not intend to let you slip through my fingers."
He came closer to her and, of course, closer to Stevie behind the couch. Stevie could hardly keep his teeth from chattering, and he kept seeing that awful 500-foot drop below him. These tones were now the tones of the true Ifrit. Tedmer drew back across the couch. "You have tried that before."
"And you bit me. I care nothing for your small, blunt teeth."
He was within reach of her now, and suddenly his hand shot out and fixed itself upon her shoulder in a crushing grip. It was an awful thing to hear that terrifying voice issue from such a handsome person, to see the strength in that apparently tender hand. Tedmer did not cry out. She struggled to free herself, but the monster's grip was not to be loosened. He fell to his knees upon the couch and sought to pull her close to him, but Tedmer spun away. He tightened his hold as she sought to pull free into the center of the room. He was so effortless in what he did not even bother to rise. He was crushing her wrists.
"I have waited too long," he roared.
Stevie saw the back. He saw the terror in Tedmer's eyes, but more than that, a powerful surge of rage shot through him, and that this unclean brute should touch such a lovely person. Stevie parted the drapery. He raised the gun butt on high, and the movement caught Tedmer's glance. She stared an instant too long. The Ifrit, sensing something behind him, started to turn. With every ounce of his strength, Stevie struck down. The blow was sufficient to break the skull of almost anything. The Ifrit reeled back, fighting to stay erect, voice opening for a scream of rage. Again Stevie struck, and again, with each blow his strength grew greater. Karuf fell to his knees, his eyes glassy. Again Stevie hammered the skull. Karuf sagged to the floor. Gradually the fine white skin of the youth began to vanish under a mat of hair. Slowly the body expanded. The helmet and cloak fell away, and the two horns appeared in the skull. The bulk of him almost filled the great chamber at last. Stevie was suddenly as weak as he had been strong. The awful stench of the Ifrit and the memory of his power almost overcame Stevie. But Tedmer acted the light. She snatched up the golden helmet and put it on Stevie's head. She threw Stevie the bundle of clothing the Ifrit had worn. "Put them on and be quick, for the love of God." Stevie brought himself around. He moved behind the curtain and quickly donned the boots and silken robe. He dropped the cape over his shoulders and pulled the neckcloth of the helmet about until it almost hid his face and fully covered his ears. When he faced Tedmer again, she gave him a hasty scrutiny to make certain there was nothing wrong. Stevie was putting his scant belongings into his sash before he buckled himself round with the ornate sword. He stared at his pocket-knife and then the Ifrit, wondering if he could further remove all danger from that source. He opened the blade, wondering a little at his own bloodthirstiness. "Come quickly! Your steel would not touch him!"
Stevie put the knife away and followed her into the passageway. She had slipped small riding boots upon her feet and thrown a blue silk cape about her. She stopped under the open slab so that Stevie could boost her up to it. She reached it, and Stevie lifted her farther until she was on the floor of the corridor above. He was in an agony of apprehension for fear the Ifrit in the chamber would come too. Tedmer dropped the Madrid's coat down to him, Tedmer dropped the Merid's coat down to him, and while she braced it against the edge, he climbed it. When he got to the top, his first glance was for the Merid, but he saw with relief that that fool had departed this life, his skull smashed like a shattered glass ball. Automatically, Stevie picked up his pen. "We must be casual," said Tedmer fiercely. "They will think you Karuf, and think that I have at last consented to be his wife. If one word or sound betrays us, we are lost." They began to stroll down the corridor and paused. Stevie's cell. They claimed the steps which led into the courtyard and were almost blinded by the brilliance of the sun. Several guards lolled about and others patrolled the walls. The night guard captain was nowhere to be seen, but in his place was a horror of a fellow whose hairy arms hung down to his knees and whose tusks reached almost to his eyes. Tedmer leaned happily upon Stevie's arm and cried, "It is worth it. One glimpse of this sunlight makes me love you, Karuf." And she laid her head on his shoulder. Stevie managed to smile. Strange how much courage he had when she was so close to him. For a moment he felt he could take on all of these fellows single-handed, and then, when he recalled Karuf, wanted to run out into the desert as hard as he could go. She stopped before the guard captain. "Karuf, to celebrate, will you let me order horses? I want to enjoy the sun and air." Stevie nodded and lifted his hand to motion the guard captain away. The fellow, in common with the others in the yard, was trying to hide a wise, knowing grin. "Immediately," said the captain, and then turned to shout his order to the men. Waiting there those next 5 minutes was the hardest thing Stevie had ever done. But with Tedmer to steady him, he managed to retain his casual air. He told himself this brilliant helmet's glare helped to hide his features, but still he could not be sure. Presently the horses were brought up. "An escort, my master," said the guard captain. "Are you not powerful enough to take me alone?" said Tedmer. "Please, Karuf, can I not be alone with you?" Stevie nodded his head. The captain helped Stevie assist Tedmer into the saddle, and the contact of those hairy hands with their claw tips almost made Stevie give himself away. As quickly as possible he mounted. With a laugh, Tedmer slapped her mount with the reins and raced out of the gate calling, "Let's see you ride!" Stevie was fast on her heels. She stayed in advance with the sand spurting up from her mount's hoofs and her cloak billowing out until they saw the palace grow small behind them. Stevie wanted to shout and sing. He had done it! He had done it! Moseb, the ghouls, and now Karuf! He came up on Tedmer's right. "We must be fast," said Tedmer urgently. "He may regain consciousness. Keep a watch to the east, and if you see a black cloud, we are lost." They rode as hard as they could. Far, far ahead, the twin spots of light, which marked the towers of brass, even at that great distance, gave both of them heart. Flailing their mounts, they raced toward their goal, side by side, looking backward every few seconds to see if the sky was clear. Brighter and brighter grew the towers, and finally they reached the outermost limit of cultivation. Peasants stopped their tilling to stare at them as they thundered past. Through the fields they raced, leaping ditches and crude fences until they came to the smooth road which ran, straight as an arrow, to the main gate which pierced the black walls before them. The great towers were growing taller and taller as they approached. "There still is Graco," said Stevie. She smiled at him, and the sight of it and the meaning of it made him giddy. "You'll take care of Graco," she said with confidence. Soldiers and guards be damned, thought Stevie.
On they raced, and then, when it seemed they would be able to throw a stone into the city, Tedmer, looking back, cried out in despair. Stevie beheld a black cloud, like a tornado, swooping out of the east. The black pillar raced upon them with such speed that they seemed to be standing still. The guards on the walls 1,000 yards ahead also saw it. The great gate screamed on its hinges as men rushed it closed. Trumpets blared to mobilize troops. "We can't make it," cried Tedmer in despair. "And those cowards of the town will never sally forth. We're finished." She pulled her mount to a rearing stop, and Stevie, seeing the hopelessness of it, stopped too. She swerved in beside him and leaned out of her saddle to throw her arms about him. She swept aside her hood and pressed her cheek to his. "This try was better than the slow death there," she sobbed. "You are worth even these fleeting hours. I love you, and I shall die with you." The world rocked before Stevie. So much was happening that he could not keep track of it. The black pillar was throwing dust ahead of it, and then the sun went out. Stevie stared up. One hand went to the hilt of the sword, the other to the revolver. He knew how useless it was. He had beaten the monster's skull until his arm ached, and the thing could still be unharmed. What good would a bullet do? He glanced back at the town and saw that the men were rushing torches to great pots of oil placed along the embrasures. Fire! Fire! That was the answer. He slammed the sword back into its scabbard. He thrust the revolver into his belt. From the sash he yanked the box of matches. How small they were, and how great was this settled cloud. Suddenly the smoke congealed, and Karuf was towering over them, talon hands outstretched to snatch up both horses and riders. "The dream was true," he bellowed, "and for this deception you have earned death." There was no escape. Karuf's household troops were all about them, standing ready to repulse any attempt of the town, leaving sweet vengeance to their master. Stevie swept the golden helmet from his head and shouted as loud as he could, "Witless ape, you are finished. When you caught me in the tower, I vanished in your hand. When—" But Karuf roared his surprise and bent over to stare at Stevie's face. You who broke my spell and brought this city back. You who ruined all my work. By Gog, spawn of Shaitan, you'll never escape me now. Your crimes have found you." In an excess of rage, he snatched downward at Stevie's horse. Suddenly, Stevie struck the light. Karuf's grip was too harsh to be stopped, his rage too great even to see fire. He yanked Stevie out of the saddle and lifted him high to smash him against the earth. The flaring match went out. Stevie, his breath squeezed out of him, feeling that all his ribs must be broken, fought to strike another. He did so, and as it burst into hot light, he stabbed towards the Ifrit's face with all his might. Karuf screamed until all the walls of the city shook. The match bit into his flesh. There was a spurt of smoke as though powder had been ignited. Dropping Stevie from 20 feet in the air, Karuf slapped both hands to his face. Stevie grabbed at the billowing black cloak, almost pulling his arms out of their sockets. Rapidly he slid down. When he reached the bottom, he fought the impulse to race away. He struck another match and touched the hem of the great silk robe. It began to burn as only dry silk can burn. Only then did Stevie dart back. He scrambled into his saddle, and the horse pivoted with a shriek of fear at the proximity of flame. But Stevie had been too intent upon Karuf to see the others, and they, all armed, ringed him round. Tedmer guided her horse up beside him. It was impossible to speak in the din of Karuf's bellows of rage and fear. Stevie looked up and shuddered. Karuf's whole hairy face was ablaze. The robe was roaring all about him. The brute was as combustible as tinder. No wonder these jinn feared flames. They themselves were hardly more than smoke and energy, only waiting the touch of fire. The great feet were stamping in agony, and the earth shook. Karuf, knowing he was doomed, tried at the last instant
to smash his human assailant. Stevie avoided the feat with difficulty because of his terrified horse. It seemed to be snowing, but it was a light white ash still glowing. The roar of flames smothered the screams of Karuf now. He crumpled to the road, writhing. The heat from him was torture. The surrounding Marids, Shaitans, Aouns, and Ifrits were drawing back from Stevie in a panic. They had seen a blaze leap 3 times from his hands. Tedmer cried out into the sudden silence, "Hold! Go not and come not, lest ye too be destroyed by this master of the flame. Draw together, for he would speak." They took one last look at Karuf's ashes, did as she bade them. Stevie collected himself enough to do what was expected of him. "I take thee as loyal subjects of the Queen Tedmer, and extract from you your oaths that you will never again approach this city out of time when not commanded to do so. If you fail, my magic fire will find you." "We hear and obey," they cried. "Leave us," commanded Tedmer. "Your master goes to attack this town and destroy its ruler. Carry the word to all the Jinn that they must come within the month to bring tribute and tender their allegiance to the crown." "We hear and obey," shouted the assembled, glad to get off so easily. They did not even dare dissolve in smoke, but raced across the fields toward the east, soon vanishing. Stevie faced the town. The walls were lined with soldiers and now with citizens, all of whom had witnessed this sight. The labor corps gawped from their posts at the oil pots. Stevie urged his mount ahead, and with Tedmer at his side, approached the great gate, replacing his helmet as he went. She was starry-eyed as she looked at him. She thought nothing whatever of his conquering an entire town single-handed. Her attitude clearly said that all he had to do was command. Moseb, ghouls, Karuf, and now Tedmer's eyes. There was no holding Stevie. He dashed into the shadow of the gate. "Open! Open in the name of Tedmer!" There was a stir in the watchtower above, and then Graco, who had not seen the death of the Ifrit, and who now silenced all those who sought to speak to him, called down, "O ye of little wit! Tedmer is dead, even as thou shall be. Archers, forward!" There was a mutter of protest, and then, again, Graco's harsh voice lashed into them. "Archers!" His own guards mounted the embrasures and fitted arrows to their bows. Stevie realized suddenly that he had lost his best trick. He could not shoot Graco at that distance. These people did not recognize the man who had done for Moseb. Desperately he tugged at the revolver as his last forlorn hope. Suddenly there was a scurry and rush, and the nearest archers whirled to face a youth who was fury itself. "Shakar!" cried Stevie. The youth wrested the bow from the first and felled the guard, and then, almost as fast as arrows could fly, he fitted them to the bow. The swift song of the bowstring accounted for 5 archers in nearly as many seconds. But Graco was never far from safety. He darted back and vanished. An archer shot through the throat, plummeted down beside Stevie, making his horse shy. The great hinges sang as the gates swung open. Asib and his men were pressing the breasts of their mounts against the heavy iron. Asib bowed reverently to Tedmer, and then was startled upright by the sight of Stevie's face. "El Stephen!" he cried. "Where has that dog gone?" cried Stevie. "To the palace with his personal troops. Form squadron." But Stevie was not waiting. He lashed his mount with the reins and shot down toward the palace steps, a quarter of a mile away along the glittering street. Behind him Asib's roar was lost. Behind him Shakar's thin wail of despair dissolved in the wind. And then, to the thunder of his own mount's hooves, was added that of Asib's squadron, and above it all rolled the silver notes of Tedmer, who cried, "Rally, archers! Rally, you fools! Cover his attack!" Stevie was drunk. His speeding mount overtook the last stragglers of Graco's troops. The men already within the palace strove to close the doors. With a leap, Stevie's mount took the steps, his strong breast bursting the portals wide before they could be closed. "Graco!" bawled Stevie, stabbing hand to belt for his revolver, and then an empty feeling rushed through him. The gun, which he had half pulled out in the shadow of the outer gate, had fallen from his sash in that swift ride. An arrow sang past his ear. Another clanged and broke upon his helmet, and then, ahead of him, he saw Graco, standing on the diwan, sword in hand, and all his troops about him. It was too late, much too late to retreat. Asib's men were still far behind. Stevie did the only thing he could do. He laid hand to his own hilt, and with steel twanging from its scabbard, dashed his horse straight at Graco. Another arrow took him in the left arm. He swung the sword at a soldier and felt the weapon drink. A thrown dagger scored his breastplate as the mount vaulted to the diwan. Graco swung his steel madly. It struck and struck in the thick leather of the saddle. He wrenched it at it and dodged Stevie's first wild blow. Graco got his weapon back and two-handed it for another hard hack. Stevie leaped back and out of the saddle. On the other side, he felt rather than saw a soldier strike at him and dodged, catching the blow on his golden shoulder plates. He heard Graco's sword strike the saddle too late, its wielder unable to stop the weighty blade once started. Darting ahead of the horse, Stevie rushed, blade out thrust. Graco leaped back only to bring up against the silver throne. Stevie felt the jolt of his blade and saw Graco's hawk face go sickly gray. He expected the tyrant to fall, but he did not, nor could Stevie free the sword. Graco was pinned to the throne, pierced through and through. A blur of action to his right made Stevie wheel, and then he staggered back, suddenly weak with relief, suddenly possessed of an insane desire to laugh. Asib's men were cleaning up what remained of Graco's personal guard, though most of them were too cowardly to fight. Tedmer was dismounting at the door, and Stevie bethought himself of Graco. The man was dead. Stevie kicked the sword loose and pulled it out to topple the tyrant out of the seat and down the steps of the diwan. He stood ready to help Tedmer to seat herself after he had thrown his cloak over the back to sop the blood. Daintily she stepped over Graco. But Tedmer stopped, shaking her head. Her smile was slow and sweet. It is not fit, my master." Stevie was embarrassed. But it's yours." "And yours," said Tedmer. If you want me." The room reeled around Stevie. Shakar arrived just in time to hold him up on one side, while Asib supported him on the other. "Awful," bawled Shakar at the soldier. "Don't stand there with your jaws unhinged. El Stephen, king of the city of brass, wishes to rest. Go!" When Bolton arrived the following month, that is the way he found things. 2 thrones side by side. A mystified guard had picked him up outside the city gate, and, in all haste, had rushed him straight before the king and queen, who, as it was morning, sat in judgment. Bolton did not recognize Stevie in El Stephen, and there was little wonder, not only because of the brilliant crown and silken robes, but because a subtle change had come over the man. "Your Majesty," gaped Bolton, "I am a traveler from another plane. I demand your mercy. I was under the impression that this was a city of the dead, and I had no idea." "My dear," said El Stephen to Tedmer, "this fellow is an evil one from my country. I should like to converse with him alone." "I hear and obey," said Tedmer, touching his hand with a caress. "Asib, clear the hall." Bolton looked fixedly at El Stephen. "You? No. It can't be you. I forgot your name. What masquerade is this?" Stevie got up. He carefully took the crown from his head and laid it upon the seat of the throne. Then he shucked off his robe of honor and began to roll up his sleeves. "Doctor," said Stevie, "because I owe you a great deal, I am going to make this as light as possible.
But to make sure you never come back, I think you had better have a lesson which will deter you from invading realms where you are not wanted." Bolton blinked. This couldn't be the skinny little fool who had acted as his guinea pig, not this hard-bodied devil. "What are you going to do?" said Bolton. Stevie didn't talk. He did it. Bolton went skidding halfway down the glass floor. Stevie followed him up. Bolton stayed down. Please, I didn't mean any harm. Stevie picked him up and knocked him down again. Bolton scrambled away like a crab, whining. His coat was ripped open and a cartridge belt glinted. Bolton started to draw and then nursed a wrist which felt like it was broken. Stevie picked up the weapon and savagely unbuckled the belt. Systematically, he emptied Bolton's pockets of all manner of bric-a-brac, including a manual of industrial chemistry. "You were prepared for a long stay," said Stevie. "How did I know? You were gone a month, and I had already calculated that the second trip would be the final trip for anyone. I decided to risk one trip to get some of these jewels you talked about, and..." "So you didn't think I'd come back a second time?" And yet you let me go out to God knows where. Well, it happens that it didn't kill me, and what you say is true. I'll end my days in this place, and that I want to still doesn't lessen your crime. He yanked Bolton to him and made certain of the search, and then he called, "Shakar!" The commander of the troops came swiftly. "Your Majesty?" "Throw this thing," said L. Stephen, "into a tight dungeon, and post a double guard over him. Under no condition let him talk to you." "You can't do this to me," wailed Bolton, groveling. "I'll do anything. I'll..." "Take him away," said L. Stephen in disgust. A little later, Tedmer came back and was shocked to find L. Stephen's knuckles bloody. "What have you done?" she cried in great concern. "Be calm. Our visitor has decided not to stay." "But I saw them putting him into a dungeon." "He'll be gone in a day or two," said L. Stephen, "and then I can rest easy." He smiled as he sucked his knuckle. "You are happy, my master?" she said, eyes adoringly upon him. "I am happy, my queen," said L. Stephen. "I am content." The end. This has been The Ultimate Adventure by L. Ron Hubbard, as read by the Bathroom Reader. Thank you for listening to this one-take toilet top audiobook production. I shall return to you soon with more bathroom reading. Goodbye for now.